Hey guys, my guest tonight is going to be animal activist Wayne Pacelle. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? I hope you said fine. I'm doing great. This is the first show. Let me get this going here. This is the first show from the changes I made. Um, my good friends Karen and Michael graciously gave me a new computer kind of workstation desk thing. It's a desk riser, and so I was real excited to get it. I'm going to be able to expand everything I do here by adding a couple monitors because I've been wanting to add some monitors and stuff in here, but I didn't have the room, so now I do with this desk riser. So as you can see, the camera is even a little higher than it usually is when I'm broadcasting, and that's because the computer. I like it. I've been working with it. It took me hours last night to get everything moved. It's amazing. It's amazing how long it takes to move. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. And I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of sunny Sacramento. It's sunny today, rain tomorrow. And we're 45 strong up and down the state of California. And that means if you think you might have a paranormal need, we can find you. But it'll take us, excuse me, pardon me. I had a little chocolate. We can get to you. It might take us a little while. California is a really, really large state. So in some cases, it might take a couple hours. Or if we have to wait a day or two to get to you, we do have mediums on staff who can call you and kind of calm down, whatever's going on before we get out there. Okay. Anyway, my guest tonight, we're going to swing right into it. He's been on before. His name is Wayne Pacelle, and he's an animal activist, and he has seen some really, really gnarly things that people have done to animals. And I'm not just talking dogs and cats. I'm talking cattle, any kind of kangaroo, any kind of animal you can think of. He has witnessed some really, really gnarly things, and so he's on to talk to us about a couple things he's been involved with. It's going to be a phone call interview, just to let you know. So yeah, we're going to be going out live on the phone, and so I'll have the usual graphics up in between. But it should be an interesting show, and I think he's in Washington D.C. And he wants to be off right at 7:30. So we're gonna make sure that we do that for him. But I want to welcome you all. If you're watching from Facebook and you like what you see tonight, please be sure to hit that like and follow button if you haven't done so already. And also share it with your friends. Let people know about the show. We want to get the word out about the show. Okay. Again, if you're watching from YouTube, same thing. If you haven't subscribed already, please be sure to subscribe if you like what you hear, and show us some love and hit that like button and the little heart button and all that stuff, and show us some love and share it with anybody you know. Okay. Anyhow, let's see who's in the chat room right now, because I'm having some fun here. Okay. Hello, Pamela Schmidt's in the chat room. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call him, and we're going to get this show started. Again, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. Okay? Here we go. Let me get this thing going. Let's get this party started.
Wayne Pacelle.
Hi, Wayne. This is Charlotte Cosa.
Hey, Charlotte. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. I'm going to put my AirPods in.
Sure. I'm going to push you down over here. There we go.
Yeah. Good. Good to hear your voice again.
Yeah.
Everything well with you?
Yeah, it's great. It's good to hear from you too.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so glad to connect again.
So, for the people that don't know who you are, can you give us some background, please?
Sure. I'm Wayne Pacelle, and I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been an animal welfare advocate for my entire adult life. In fact, I started an animal welfare group when I was a college student, and I have run a number of the large national animal welfare groups, and now I run two organizations. One is called Animal Wellness Action. That group seeks to influence public policy, so we're passing laws to help animals and prevent animal cruelty. And we also work to enforce the laws once they're enacted. So, for example, passing a law to ban dogfighting and cockfighting
Mm-hmm.
on every inch of U.S. soil, and then working to see that the laws are enforced. Then the second group that I run is called the Center for a Humane Economy. And while Animal Wellness Action seeks to influence Animal Wellness Action seeks to influence government,
Mm-hmm.
it's the Center for Humane Economy that seeks to influence business.
Mm-hmm.
So we just had a very big pair of wins. We have a campaign at the Center for Humane Economy called Kangaroos Are Not Shoes.
Oh.
And we were able to secure commitments from Puma and Nike, two of the three biggest brands in the world for athletic shoes and other athletic wear, that they will no longer, by the end of 2023, use kangaroo skins to make their soccer cleats. And there are 2 million kangaroos killed every single year in the outback of Australia, mainly to make soccer cleats. There are some other uses for the kangaroos, but this is an absolute massacre of kangaroos, and there's tremendous collateral damage with the newborns, who are known as joeys. Many of your listeners probably know that.
Mm-hmm.
The joeys are in the pouch or at the foot of their mothers, and the mothers are shot, so the joeys are orphaned, and it's 500,000 to 800,000 joeys orphaned every year. That's just an unbelievable collateral effect of this commercial slaughter of kangaroos.
That's incredible. I didn't know it was that large a slaughter.
And it's done for foreign markets, for a product that nobody needs any longer. We have long recognized that these companies, Nike and Puma and Adidas, have largely moved away from kangaroo skins for most of their shoes. In fact, the World Cup, which is the premier global event for soccer, was conducted in November, December of 2022, and it was a remarkable final. Argentina beat Brazil in a shootout in overtime, and we added up all of the goals that were scored in every game from the first match to the final with Argentina and France. There were 172 goals scored, Charlotte.
Wow.
164 of them came off of the feet of soccer players. These are the most elite soccer players in the world, who are using non-kangaroo based shoes. So it's already been clear that the best players in the world don't need kangaroo skin shoes. And finally, we were able to get these companies to stop using some significant set of models of shoes made from kangaroos. And when you think about this, this is the biggest sport in the world, right? It's played not just all over the United States. It's in Mexico, it's in Argentina, it's Brazil and Nigeria and Kenya and all over Europe and China. I mean, the whole globe. And what is the core equipment that you need to play soccer? You need soccer cleats.
Mm-hmm.
You wear a shirt and shorts. So for these companies to change their tune is incredible. And I really encourage everyone to go to our website, centerforhumaneeconomy.org, and sign up and get our alerts, because we need your help to get Nike to follow the lead of Puma and Nike. Adidas is an outlier at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally unacceptable that Adidas is still making shoes made from kangaroos. It's completely unacceptable. This is a Germany-based company, and they need to get in alignment with their major competitors now.
Absolutely. But now you mentioned that the soccer players were getting all their goals with non-kangaroo shoes. Has that been the argument that the kangaroo-based shoe is better?
Well, that used to be the argument. I mean, essentially, it was Puma in the 1960s that started this phenomenon, and the argument was, well, the kangaroo skin is very strong and it's thin, and you have a great feel for it when you're playing soccer. I think it was mostly marketing hype. I mean, there may be a little bit of truth to it, but the reality is that we can have that same effect with these other fabrics that we create. In fact, when Puma made its announcement earlier in March, they said that the feel of these new fabrics that they're going to use, they'll be vegan shoes, are superior to anything that's ever been offered by the company. And again, all you need to do is is look at the data from the World Cup. The world's elite players, 95% of them wear shoes that are not made from kangaroos. Most of them are vegan. And this is just the way the world is changing. You know, what I often say is that it's not just a matter of cruelty to animals.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we are smart enough to figure out ways to live our lives, to conduct sport like soccer, to eat foods that don't come from factory farms, to have testing methods in laboratories that don't rely on tormenting primates or dogs.
Mm-hmm.
That we humans are very different and distinct. We are incredibly ingenuitive and creative, and we can figure out ways to get the things that we need to get done, but not leave a trail of animal victims. And that's really, what we specialize in at the Center for a Humane Economy and Animal Wellness Action.
Now, where the kangaroo are concerned, they're not humanely killing them, are they?
They're not humanely killed because, humane killing is a difficult thing to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that it's difficult to make that argument that when you're in the wild and you're shooting these animals from 100 meters in the dead of night, the animals inevitably, some of them are not killed quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and they hop away, in the darkness, not to be retrieved, to die, in some cases, a lingering death. But then the joeys, they're orphaned, and if they scamper away and aren't found in the dark of night, then they're going to starve, or
Mm-hmm.
a predator is going to come and consume them without their mother to protect them. And I don't see how anyone can say that's humane. And what the Australian government tells the commercial hunters to do, these are not sport hunters who are doing this for personal utilization.
Mm-hmm.
These are commercial hunters who are individually killing lots of kangaroos and then doing it for profit to ship their parts all over the world. They tell the hunters, the commercial hunters, if they come across one of the joeys, to bash their skull in with a rock.
Wow.
Or hit their head against the bumper or the back end of their truck.
Mm.
So this is crude.
Mm-hmm.
This is coarse. This is inhumane. And again, it's the scale of it. There's no bigger slaughter of wildlife in the world than the commercial kangaroo slaughter. I worked for many years to dramatically reduce the Canadian seal hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Every spring, these harp seals and hooded seals swim down from Greenland down the Atlantic coast of Canada. So past Newfoundland and Labrador, and then sometimes they go down to Prince Edward Island and even off of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And these baby seals are born, obviously, on these ice floes. The mother's coats are not coveted in the international fur markets, but the babies, who have this brilliant white coat, were for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And they were killing 300,000 baby seals. So these men would come in boats with guns and then clubs. It's actually called a haka-pick. It's got a blunt metal, flattened element at the top on one side of this big swinging club and hammer, so like a giant hammer. On the other side, it's got a sharp metal spike, and so they club them with the flat blunt metal end of the club, and then they stick them with the sharp spike once they've killed them or injured them, and to pull them onto the ship. So that was a horror. These poor baby seals, they're too young to be able to swim, and they don't have any legs, so they can't run.
Mm-hmm.
They just have their flippers and fins. Flippers, and it was just so barbaric, and the animals are so vulnerable. It was a nursery that these men came into a nursery and massacred all the babies. But that was 300,000 victims.
Wow.
This in Australia is 2 million. It's 7 times bigger. And it's twice as many juveniles killed. So it's something that is of enormous scale. And I felt when we at the Center for Humane Economy, with the support of Animal Wellness Action, when we launched this campaign, I really, really felt that Nike, Adidas, Puma, New Balance, Vizuma, these big athletic shoe companies couldn't withstand the scrutiny. That this practice was so horrific and so unnecessary because other fabrics could get the job done for a professional soccer player or a weekend soccer player, or a 14-year-old kid who is trying out for his local soccer team, that all of those needs of sport could be met by the fabrics. So why do this to these poor kangaroos, the iconic symbols of Australia, along with the koala?
Right.
And fortunately, this month, Charlotte, was a breakthrough month to get Puma and Nike. So these are just tremendous wins for the Center for Humane Economy.
So I understand that perfectly. The other thing I was thinking when you were talking about the uses of the kangaroo that they use over there, and I know this because I have an Australian dog, a Kelpie, and I know a lot of the times that they will use kangaroo bones for the dogs too.
Yes. Well, they do sell some. They do take some of the meat. The main reason they kill the kangaroos is for the skin, but they try to extract more profit from them, and they use it in dog food for the most part. But most dog food companies don't do it. I mean, when you kill animals for meat, whether it's for human consumption or for companion animals, you are basically in a cooled environment, right? You're in a slaughterhouse,
right?
And you get the animal in a chute, and if it's a cow, cattle, then use a captive bolt gun and shoot them in the head, and then you slit their throat, and the blood drains from them. It's supposed to be quick, it's supposed to be painless, but obviously there are a lot of challenges in terms of stress during transport, and then going into the chute and prodding them, and then if they see what's going on, obviously that these are conscious, alert animals, and that once they kill them, they immediately get into a very cooled, temperature-wise environment, and they refrigerate the meat. These animals are killed way out in the wild, in the outback. There's no refrigeration there. I mean, they might have a small heater on their truck, but they're out shooting for hours, and it takes a while to get the animals, properly processed where you can even get them into a cooling apparatus on the truck. So I think as a food safety issue, it raises really significant questions. And again, killing wild animals for global markets for pet food, we stopped that. You can't think of other species that we do that with in the world. And no other species in the wild is killed for shoes. I mean, yes, you do have, alligator boots and the like, but those animals are typically farmed. This is killing animals from the wild, from their native habitats. These are not non-native species.
The other thing I was thinking of, and this goes back to when I was little, like I would say around 7 or 8 years old, and I remember being on this ranch, and this horse was eating dog food, and my dad got this chuckle out of it because we all know what some of the dog food used to be made out of. And here the horse was almost like a cannibal eating dog food that had horse stuff in it. I mean,
that has changed. Yeah. It used to be we had a lot of slaughterhouses for horses in the United States, and even in 1990, if you go back 30 years ago, a little more than 30 years ago, we were killing 350,000 American horses at maybe 10 slaughter plants in the U.S., and then we were also live exporting some of them to Canada and Mexico. The good news is that number is down to 20,000 American horses slaughtered for human consumption, and that's again down from 350,000. And we at Animal Wellness Action are mounting an effort this year to end all North American slaughter of American horses. And we in the United States don't eat horses, but we have exported them, and we export them, the meat, when we had slaughter plants in the U.S., and now when we live export them to Canada and Mexico, they don't eat them either. So they're mainly exported to Japan, China, and Russia. And it used to be that the Europeans, had a number of countries that ate a decent amount of it. Italy was number one. France, Belgium were up there as well. But the horses come off of, a farm, or they're coming out of a pleasure riding situation, or they're a working horse with like a police unit, or they come off the racetrack.
Right.
And their medication history is unknown when they're presented for slaughter. You don't know if they're getting butazolidine, which is an anti-inflammatory, which is forbidden for use in animals destined for consumption. We did a report a number of years ago. 129 different drugs are routinely administered to horses that are forbidden for consumption. So the European Union looked at this after they saw that report and said, "Oh my gosh, we're violating all of our norms and all of our scientific standards in permitting this." So that the Europeans really cut off the slaughtered horses from Mexico, and they put some new standards for horses that are slaughtered in Canada. And this has been a boon to reduce the numbers, but now we need a United States policy. We've shut all the slaughter plants down in the U.S. Now we need to stop taking American horses on long distance transport to Canada and Mexico for slaughter.
The other question I had that I was thinking about, what about China with the dog festivals and stuff? Is there anything being done that way?
Oh yes, I mean it's difficult. I mean China is a communist and totalitarian government, and they don't tolerate dissent like we have in the United States. They don't have a network of nonprofit organizations. We have 1 million nonprofits in the United States that advance animal welfare, environmental protection, feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, fight breast cancer, Alzheimer's, or heart disease, or you name it. I mean, there are nonprofits for every kind of social concern in our society. This is kind of the private safety net that supplements, what government might do to provide some assistance in cases. And that has meant, when it comes to animal welfare, that we've had 150 years of normalizing notions of proper treatment of animals, humane treatment, opposition to animal cruelty. But the Chinese have never had that. And, just thinking of animals in a strictly utilitarian form has been the way that society has operated for a long time. So that has meant that dog eating has been part of the experience of some substantial number of people. I mean, people were using ivory. They had lots of ivory carving shops until that stopped because of world pressure. Same thing with traditional Chinese medicine. They use rhino horn. They use bear gallbladder. There are enormous factory farms. There are high-rise factory farms for pigs in China. So we take for granted groups like the Center for Humane Economy and Animal Wellness Action and thousands of other animal welfare groups. And we're struggling and fighting to stop these atrocious abuses in the United States, like dog fighting and cockfighting, horse slaughter, and lots of other things that I mentioned. But the Chinese, with a population of 1.4 billion and an awfully utilitarian attitude toward animals, it's just kind of, as Ross Perot used to say, it's a giant sucking sound. I mean, to paraphrase Ross Perot, you just get a lot of animals just consumed by a country like that. I mean, they depopulated a lot of the forests in Asia for killing wildlife for traditional medicine and for food, and they were huge consumers of, as I said, ivory and bear gallbladders. This is a real challenge. China is a real threat to animals. There's no question. Now there's an emerging animal welfare movement there, finally, but there's a long way to go with that country.
Now, with dog fighting, there's a lot of rumors that are on the internet about how the dog fighters are able to get the dogs that they get. There's rumors about houses being, fences or houses being marked and things like that, or people like on Craigslist that want to give their dog away, and it ends up going to a dog fighting ring. Are any of those rumors true, the way they do that?
I think there are a lot of rumors on that. It's difficult to know, and I think clearly dog fighters are disreputable people. They're criminals. They are, do awful things to animals, and they're gambling on it, which is a crime. And that form of gambling is a crime. And it's often tied up in narcotics trafficking and money laundering and a wide range of other criminal conduct. You're not going to get an upstanding person, who's doing that. So
Right.
It's not like they're going to be a model citizen when they're not dogfighting. So sure, they can steal dogs. Sure, they can misrepresent why they want the animal. I do think sometimes people exaggerate it. At times, I don't think that the cruelty is ever exaggerated. I mean, it's miserable and terrible. But I think, it just goes to the point that if we have an animal in our lives, we have to provide security and safety, and we have to be on the lookout for people who do terrible things. And, this is a felony. We want people to report animal fighting crimes to us. People can send us an email at animalcrueltytips@animalwellnessaction.org if you're aware of cockfighting or dogfighting in your community. We want to know. We'll try to work with law enforcement to take action. We have partnering organizations that are specialists also in investigations. There's a group called Showing Animals Respect and Kindness, SHARK, that we partner with on cockfighting investigations. And there are a lot of things you can do. But any animal problem requires an engaged and conscious citizenry. We have to be alert to these problems, and we have to confront these problems when they emerge.
Absolutely. What's one of the worst cases that you come across in the United States?
With animals?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends, Charlotte. I would draw a distinction between kind of random acts of cruelty where someone does, something just god awful to an animal, a pet or a horse, or some other poor creature who's been victimized. And I won't even say some of the things that people do. And then there are the systemic abuses of animals, like factory farming and laboratory animal testing, and the mistreatment of animals in wildlife management, trophy hunting, and commercial trapping with steel gel-like-wool traps, or the commercial killing of kangaroos that I mentioned.
Right.
There's the killing of other animals for like mink farms, having these mink on factory farms and killing them for their pelts. I mean, so I think many of the things that go on, the mink farms are just atrocious. These are wild animals that are aquatic and they're solitary, and they're put in cages, oftentimes with other mink. I mean, these are highly aggressive animals. I have one colleague who is a devoted animal activist, but he grew up on a ranch in Idaho and Utah, and his family was in a cattle ranching, but they had a mink farm, and he used to go in the morning. His grandfather used to assign him go in the morning and pull out the dead mink who had been killed the prior day because of aggression between the mink, because they were housed together. I mean, this is totally it's so abusive and so reckless. And for what? For a mink coat that nobody needs any longer. Fortunately, again, as I mentioned before about the horse slaughter decline, it used to be 350,000 horses in 1990, slaughtered for human consumption, for export to Asia and Europe, down to 20,000 now. Well, around 1960, we had 7,000 mink farms in the United States. Now we're down to 60. So from 7,000 to 60, but some of them are pretty big. So they're still killing 1.5 million mink a year. But this is totally unacceptable from a cruelty perspective. But it's also a terrible threat because mink are uniquely susceptible to viruses. And all of the documented cases of SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, that have spilled over from animals to humans have been mink. There have been 5 cases of this, one in Michigan and then 4 in Europe that are documented. And there was just a recent case of mink getting avian influenza or bird flu from chickens, and there's deep concern among scientists that not only could that virus then mutate in those animals and be spilled over to people, but it could do something that's more extensive in terms of a genetic reassortment. They call it reassortment, where the virus can change in terms of its sequencing, its genetic sequencing so much that it can become much more transmissible to human beings. And if that happens, the mortality rate for bird flu, the case examples of mortality, there's been a global outbreak of bird flu for some time now. The case rate in India, I think about 850 people have died. The case rate is a mortality rate of 53%. 53%. Wow. So 1 out of every 2 people who get the virus die. Now, for COVID, it's been about 0.5%, and the average age of death for the people who died, and a lot of people died, is 82 years old. So it largely affects the elderly. But that's 0.5%, and look what it did to our society, right? Look at the disruption that created in the United States and across the world. Imagine if it were 53%. I mean, 10 times 0.5% is 5%. So you're talking about 100 times more virulent. I mean, as one of our veterinarians at the Center for Humane Economy says, it would end civilization as we know it. But we're playing Russian roulette with these practices by having mink on these farms. Mink and pigs are the most vulnerable animals when it comes to contracting viruses and then potentially reassorting the virus and spilling it over to humans. So a very dangerous situation. We had a very significant outbreak of swine flu in 2009, and the number of people died was in the tens of thousands. So it could get a lot worse than that. That's why we, in an era, COVID-19 era, we should have learned our lesson, and we should be doing animal management practices that are sensible and don't put people at risk unnecessarily. Again, this is just we're being reckless and thinking, well, it's never going to happen to us. Well, it happened with COVID. I mean, the latest science, does point to the origin of this as a live wildlife market, and we knew that the first SARS virus that happened in the early 2000s definitely had an animal origin. So this is a phenomenon. 75% of diseases that afflict people start in non-humans and jump the species barrier. So this is not unusual.
Right.
What's unusual is that it can be highly contagious and it can be virulent, and that's a deadly combination for us as a society.
What can we do to stop all that?
Well, we shouldn't have live wildlife markets where we're eating wildlife. We shouldn't have mink farms where we're killing mink for fur coats when we absolutely don't need them. These are animal-human interfaces that are needlessly risky when you know that certain wildlife species are much more vulnerable to contagions and to spillover. There's just no reason to take this sort of risk. And this is exactly what we've called that. We have a bill in the Congress that we introduced last Congress called Minks Are Super Spreaders. Mink in narrowly kept spaces are super spreaders. That's what the Minks Act stands for. And it passed the U.S. House, but the Senate didn't take it up because the senators from Wisconsin fought it because they've got 20 mink farms in the state. Well, the economic value of those mink farms is negligible for the United States. And the truth is that it could cost us billions or trillions of dollars if we have a viral outbreak and we don't have vaccines to deal with the threat. So, Charlotte, you asked what we can do. I mean, there's no single answer to that. Every situation is sui generis, but the reality is that we have to be cognizant of creating a particularly dangerous setup for a virus to emerge and to, mutate or reassort and then potentially, threaten human beings. We can't protect ourselves entirely, but we can minimize risks. It's a risk assessment issue. And I think it's crazy for us to have mink farms. Just like I argue from a moral perspective, we shouldn't be killing kangaroos for shoes when we can do something else.
Right.
We don't need mink for coats any longer. Almost nobody wears them. It's a tiny little percentage of consumers in the world who consume mink, yet they're posing a risk to billions of people. A handful of people buy the product. It's a replaceable coat. You can get something else to satisfy your desires. So it's just not needed. It's just absolutely not needed.
What about, I know this is kind of far-fetched, but what about vaccines for these animals? I mean, if they know they're carrying a certain virus, can they not come up with some kind of vaccine?
Vaccines don't stop the disease. The vaccines really suppress the symptoms. And they did develop a vaccine for mink, but it doesn't prevent the virus from mutating. It just really suppresses the symptoms, so you don't know exactly what the condition is of the animals. So we have to prevent these in the first place. Vaccines are a palliative circumstance. It doesn't cure the disease.
Okay. Well, when you think about that with the big picture, like you talk about these mass farmers that breed chickens and everything. I mean, that stuff can spread really, really fast.
Oh well, we have a bird flu outbreak right now in the United States, and it's a global virus. It'll be the most expensive bird flu pandemic in American history, and again, it's all over the world. It's not a normal circumstance for us. It's now in 48 states, and we've had to kill about 60 million birds in the U.S. We've depopulated them, mainly laying hen houses, because you have 250,000 laying hens in a single facility, and one animal gets sick, and they have to kill the whole lot of them because it can course through that overcrowded, highly stressed population. Same thing with turkey production. So these are having economic impact. It's why egg prices and turkey prices spiked for some months, and the prices continue to be up. And these are big threats, pandemic threats, disease threats. These are fundamental. We don't think about them so much, but as I said, 75% of diseases that afflict human beings started in non-human animals, and as we have more interactions with them in more dangerous ways, especially with certain species, we're really courting trouble. Really courting trouble.
And what about the cosmetic industry now? Is that slowing down quite a bit from using animals?
The cosmetic industry with animals has been on the decline for a long time. It's a very, very small segment of animal testing. The biggest category of testing is the use of animals for drug development. So for 84 years until Animal Wellness Action, the Center for Humane Economy, got this passed in the Congress in 2022, every year, I shouldn't say every year, it's been in place since 1938, continuously, a policy that all new drugs, before they go to human clinical trials, have to go through extensive testing on animals. Even though the data showed that the animals were not particularly predictive in forecasting the human reaction to those drugs. So we were using monkeys, we were using dogs, we were using ferrets, we were using a wide range of animals. And we would do the animal tests and screen for the safety of the drug and also the efficacy. Does the drug do as advertised? If it's a heart drug, does it help your heart? If it's a pain drug, does it relieve pain? And the data show that in 90 to 95% of cases, when the drugs pass muster in animals, then they go to human clinical trials, they fail. So you can have 20 drugs pass muster in extensive animal tests with each of the protocols going through hundreds or thousands of animals. And then it fails in human clinical trials, so you've got to start over. It's a colossal waste of money. It's not helping protect people from these drugs, even if it does, kind of work at some level in the human clinical trials, the drug, you're still not safe. Listen to the drug ads on television.
Right.
They talk about all these side effects. Oh, you could cause depression or sudden heart attack, or you could swallow your tongue, or you lose your hearing. I mean, these side effects are incredible. So they're doing that because the animal tests and the whole testing protocol doesn't protect you from potential side effects. And we have learned more and more that each of us is different. Charlotte is different than Wayne Pacelle.
Right.
And, Charlotte is different from Susie Lamb, who's different from, Johnny Hudgens. And we can react differently. So this whole testing protocol was so rudimentary and so archaic to be using a separate species. Now we have many more sophisticated testing methods that have proved far more reliable. And that was a key to our success in passing the FDA Modernization Act 2.0 that Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky and Senator Cory Booker led this effort in the Senate. It was a totally bipartisan effort, and it's the most important animal testing bill that's ever been passed. And I'm so proud that the Center for Humane Economy was able to drive that outcome with animal wellness action.
Now, what about chimpanzees and stuff? Are they still doing tests on them? Because I saw like an older TV show where it showed the military doing helmet tests on these poor chimps. Where they were literally crushing.
It's been stopped, and I worked on it. And in 2015, we finally ended the use of invasive experiments on chimps. And it was a complicated process, but the National Institutes of Health, led by Dr. Francis Collins, and then some very strong congressional action resulted in the NIH and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service essentially collaborating to declare chimps endangered and to forbid their use in invasive experiments. And that's been the case since 2015. We've had a chimp population that had been used in labs, and it's aging, and there's a good amount of death that's occurred because many of them have been infected with diseases, so there's a high rate of mortality. But there are a number of chimpanzee sanctuaries around the country, the main one being the National Chimp Sanctuary called Chimp Haven in Shreveport, Louisiana. But I'm glad to tell you that that's no longer occurring, that we're not conducting invasive experiments on chimps. It's another one of the things that I'm very, very proud of, and having helped to shepherd that through.
So you were talking about these sanctuaries. So is that what happens to these chimps that were in captivity that they were testing on, that they go to sanctuaries?
Yeah, they go to sanctuaries if laboratories release them, but a lot of the laboratories have held on to them for reasons that I must say are perplexing for me, but they get government money, to house the chimps, and they get some, additional support to run some of their operations. So they try to hold on to them. So there's been a bit of a battle between the animal welfare groups and some of these laboratories, and it's been going on for quite a while. But it's there's been, as I said, there's been a lot of death among the chimps just because many of them are older and they've been infected. But we're hoping that more of them can get to the sanctuaries and have a better life rather than being in some dank laboratory.
Do you think it's because maybe they're hiding there were tests that you guys didn't know were actually going on with the chimps, and that's what they're hiding?
Well, I think that the whole industry is generally cloaked in secrecy. I mean, they don't want to talk about this because they know that it's morally uncomfortable for a lot of people. They don't want to bring additional scrutiny on their operations, and it's clandestine. They just don't like to talk about it. So I think that secrecy has been a big part of the equation for them for an awfully long time.
And you guys have done a terrific job, finding these things to shut this stuff down.
Well, I think these gains that we've made on animal testing are really path-breaking. The FDA Modernization Act 2.0 is just a landmark achievement in our nation. And countries all across the world saw what we did, and they're looking potentially to replicate what we achieved in the United States Congress. And we did it in record time, less than 2 years. And the chimp, the ban on invasive experiments, that was a big deal. And then in 2016, worked to get a legal standard for chemical testing. So, there's a law that really is about evaluating the threats that chemicals pose. There are tens of thousands of chemicals out there, and very few of them have been adequately tested, and a lot of cancers and other problems result from these chemicals. So there's been testing there, but again, the animal testing has not been very protective of humans. So in 2016, there was a law against Senator Booker, was very involved from New Jersey, to stipulate that alternative tests have to be tried first, and the animal tests are more of a last resort. But that was unusual at the time, and we're definitely having a fight and demand that alternatives be used when they're available.
Is it harder to shut down, say, testing programs, for the U.S. government than it is to do with the big private companies?
Well, the government is definitely more vulnerable at times to pressure, but in different ways businesses can be. The problem with all this is it can be so clandestine, and that people really don't know what's going on. You've got to do a Freedom of Information Act request and try to get some information, and they really keep a tight lid on all this stuff. So it's a challenge for us, but we're working hard to try to drive a new era of alternatives use.
You guys certainly are working hard. I mean, the work you do is absolutely incredible. For this.
Thank you. I thank you. And it's so important that people don't leave it just up to us, though. It's just essential that people get involved, right? And it's supporting our group. Becoming a member for $20 or $25 is more important than most people realize. But then also, writing a letter to Congress or calling a company like Adidas and saying, hey, do better, stop killing the kangaroos. It's the power of collective action that drives big changes. None of the things that we achieved could have been achieved just based on our small professional staff. It's really having so many people who care, and the power of that collective action to really demand a better way of treating animals. These animals are they're remarkable in so many ways, right? I mean, monkeys or chimps are incredible climbers, or elephants are so massive, and they migrate 40 miles in a day and feed and really change the whole savannah. And bears have their attributes. All these animals have their attributes. Cheetahs are so fast, and hawks are so fast in flight. I mean, they're superior to us in some of their individual athletic abilities and physical characteristics. We're superior in some other ways, but when it comes to pain, we are all equals. They feel pain just like we do. They feel terror and fright like we do. They can feel happiness and joy like we do. If we can avoid causing them pain, we should. And sometimes we're so brainwashed to think that this is the way that we should be handling animals, that we should eat them, from the factory farms, or we should test them in the laboratories, or we should shoot them for trophies, whether they're elephants or moose or whoever they are. I mean, to wear their pelts as a fur coat for us. I mean, we can become conditioned in such a way that we are oblivious to our effect on other animals. And the whole premise of the animal welfare movement is to foster a more conscious awareness that these other animals matter, that they have lives that matter to them just like our lives matter to us. And we really have a duty in a society that already has legal strictures on cruelty to animals. What we need to do is more logically apply these strictures so that it applies to these large agricultural settings, or it applies to laboratories, or it applies to abusive wildlife management practices. We've got to do better. We really must.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the animals have feelings for this and feelings for that, because I know for a long time, when you listen to different, like, or read different stuff, a lot of the time people, I don't know, who these people were, but they felt that animals didn't have the same feelings as us or anything, that it was different.
Yeah, well, that's a way that you separate yourself, right? It clears the path for you morally if you think, oh my God, these animals are so different. We're of a totally different order than they are, and that means you can do anything to them, right? And it's kind of conscious denial about how we treat them, and science and observation and common sense tell us that sure, animals are different, but they're fundamentally similar to us in their capacity to suffer. And that's the really central moral criterion in evaluating how we should treat them. And as I said, the other aspect is, there's a matter of necessity versus gratuitous killing, right? I mean, if you're hiking in the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana and a grizzly comes after you, you've got a legitimate argument for self-defense.
Right.
You have to take the life of the grizzly if the grizzly bear's, coming at you or strikes you. But why go and chase one just to shoot one for a trophy when he's not bothering you at all? Those are totally different circumstances, even though the act of shooting the animal may be the same. The circumstances and the moral context make all the difference in the world. And we're asking people to make a more reasoned judgment about the context of the killing. And we're saying, again, that human beings are very special. They are very distinct. And one of our great aspects is that we're so ingenuitive. We can figure out how to live our lives without leaving a trail of animal victims in our wake. And that is what makes us special. But we've got to act on the damn thing. We've got to take action and help these animals. Well,
what came to mind when you were saying all that was that there used to be this wildlife adventure TV show on, and I forget who the hell it was, but the guy was a hunter, and he would leave food out and bait the animals to come in. And then while they were eating, he'd shoot them. Give me a break.
Oh, baiting is a disgraceful activity. It's done for bears in many states. It's done for deer in a bunch of states. It violates every norm and standard when it comes to even hunting ethics.
Yeah.
You're supposed to give the animal a fair opportunity to escape.
Yeah.
It's called fair chase. And this is something that's completely at odds with those standards. Completely at odds.
So when you guys are able to get these victories, I guess the way to look at this stuff is one victory at a time, because the more victories you get, the better everything else is going to get, right? Because it's going to take time to do this stuff.
It does. It lifts all boats. When you create a new norm, it changes the standards. But the challenge that we have is that animal welfare is so expansive in its broad attention to so many species and so many circumstances. So there's a lot to be done. It can kind of be overwhelming at times, but this is the beauty of being tactical and strategic and taking on issues like our Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign. Nike shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
And finally, Nike relented. And that is exactly the way it should have been. And we are very tactical about all the things that we do at the Center for Humane Economy and Animal Wellness Action. That's why I really ask everyone to become part of us. Even if you can't join us financially, if you don't want to give $10 or $20, I hope you will think about that. Sign up and get our email alerts and take action. And we'll guide you, tell you what the most urgent national legislation is for animals, the most important corporate campaigns. And if we together exert influence and pressure, we can really make big changes. Really
Absolutely.
Big changes.
So what is your message to anybody that might be doing stuff to animals?
Well, really imagine if the situation were reversed, right? Imagine if the animal had all the power over you. Or imagine if there was some, different, being that came from another galaxy, and they had more power, and they had more smarts, and they exploited and enslaved us, or hurt us in some other way just for some unnecessary purpose. Imagine what that would feel like. Put yourself in the other's shoes. I mean, that's the whole notion of empathy, is the ability to think about how someone else is feeling. And might does not make right. Just because we happen to be the most powerful species because of the big brain that we have, doesn't mean that we should exert this abuse of animals as a routine aspect of our social behavior in our society. And I think that I ask people to, again, it's not a question of equal intelligence or equal ability in some other mental pursuit. It's a question of the equality of the capacity to suffer. And these other animals suffer, and we should rethink some of the most basic ways that we live. And not just a matter of policy, it's also personal habits. We should think about the food that we eat, and being much more conscious of the animals. We often are very disconnected from these supply chains. And just because you're far from it, where the killing occurs or the factory farming occurs, doesn't mean you escape any moral culpability.
Right.
I mean, we should be thinking about this, and it's important for us to make change in this way.
What's next for you?
Well, we've got a very big agenda in the Congress. There's something called the Farm Bill. We've got new animal fighting legislation. I mentioned we want to ban horse slaughter. There's this terrible abusive practice called horse soaring in the Tennessee walking horse world. We're trying to stop that. We've got a new animal testing bill that we're trying to pass. On the corporate campaign front, we want to get these pharmaceutical companies to embrace alternatives, Pfizer and Merck and all the others, now that we have passed the FDA Modernization Act and eliminated the animal testing mandate that was in place for all new drug development protocols. Our Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign, we had these great wins, but we're not done. We still have to get Adidas and New Balance and others to agree to kangaroo-free supply chains, and we'd like them to move toward vegan offerings with recyclable and sustainable human fabrics. Again, so much on so many fronts, and really the best way, Charlotte, for your listeners to figure this out is to go to animalwellnessaction.org or go to the Center for a Humane Economy.org and get involved in our campaigns.
Absolutely. Wayne, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It's
Great
always
to talk with you.
It's always wonderful to hear not about these poor animals, but about what you guys are doing out there on the ground doing to stop this stuff.
Well, I thank you so much for helping spread the word. You're great.
All right, sir. You have a good rest of your evening, okay?
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let me get back in here, guys. Hang on. Wrong button. Okay. I need more arms, right? That was Wayne. That was Wayne Pacelle, and they do a lot of great work, trying to prevent cruelty to animals. It's something that we all should be aware of. I mean, if you look at, like he says, you look at the farming and you look at everything else. Anyway, I am trying to figure out and get used to where the camera is now because the laptop is sitting up higher, which means the camera is sitting up higher. So I'm trying to, you see me on camera, trying to look around and get adjusted to this stuff. So it'll take me a while to get adjusted to it. But I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I hope you garnered some really cool information from the show, as I did. That there was stuff I didn't even know about. So that's what it's all about, is to help educate. Okay, tomorrow night, same place, same model. Let me turn this other mic off because I got some echo going on because I use another mic for the phone. Tomorrow night, Jesse H. Long is going to be with us. Jesse H. Long is a lifetime abductee, and he and his brother, I believe, from the age of 6, were starting to ended up getting abducted together. And he's got a really, really interesting story to tell. He's even had an alien implant in his body. So he's going to be here tomorrow to talk to us. Anyhow, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it so much. Again, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're equal opportunity here. If you're watching from Facebook and you haven't done so already and you like the show, please show me some love with a thumbs up or some hearts or something like that. And if you haven't followed us yet, you should do that because we have a lot we have a lot going on right now. Also, if you're watching, same thing with YouTube. If you're watching from YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, we have over 552 videos over there, all different topics. As you can tell, we don't always do paranormal stuff. We do things like this to bring awareness with people. Okay, but yeah, please subscribe and show us some love. Give me some thumbs up over on YouTube, and things like that. California Haunts can also be found on Instagram under Ghosty Gal, and that's all lowercase. You can find us over at TikTok under California Haunts, and that's lowercase. You can find us over at Twitter under Cal Haunts. So you can find us everywhere, mostly on Facebook, I think. But you can find us everywhere if you want to check us out and whatnot. Anyway, thank you so much for coming tonight. I have one more quick announcement to make. We have a Patreon opened up, and our Patreon is going to be offering a lot of stuff to people that subscribe. I'm only doing one level of subscriptions. We're keeping it at $50. I'm sorry. My God, I'm so tired. We're keeping it at $5.50, $5.50. That way it stays affordable for everybody. But what you get for that is anytime we do a pre-record video, before it airs on the main show, at the pre-record video, let me get myself back. In fact, my ad didn't come up, and that was okay. There we go. I don't know. I can't push my buttons tonight. But anyone who signs up at that 550 level, when we do a pre-record video, like tomorrow morning, I'm shooting one at 9 a.m. You guys get first crack at the Patreon, and it's a private viewing of that video. So it would probably air a week to 2 weeks in advance of the actual air date. Okay, so that's one of the perks you get. If Nancy's on the show and you guys want to ask Nancy additional questions about what she talked about, we go over there and privately do that with the Patreon people. Or you get a real interesting guest like this gentleman and say you want to pick his brain a little more about what he does. I can probably get him to go over the Patreon, not after hours because it's late by the time the show gets done, but say pick a day and you guys can ask him questions. So that's what the Patreon's about. Plus, once we get enough members, I've got some really cool giveaways. And so I'm going to be doing giveaways for people. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun over there. And we're going to be doing, and as the thing matures, we're going to be doing more and more stuff. But in fact, we have one video I shot that I'm getting ready to do the editing on it. And it's going to be the first video, and it's already advertised over there, of alien abductees. Okay, so you guys will be whoever joins that Patreon will be the first ones to see it. So it's only $5.50 a person, and per month, and I think it's a good deal. And if you do it per month, right? Maybe you don't want to do it the next month, but you'll do it the month after or whatever. But it's something to look into. Okay, so I have put the link on like when you go to YouTube and Facebook and look at the information on this show. The link is down at the bottom for you to click on and go on over there. Okay? All right. Enough being said, I'm going to give you his information, and then we're going to call it a night. Okay? Here we go. Okay, his websites are Animal Wellness, Action.org, Wayne Pacelle Facebook, and BlackfishMovie.com. And of course, his books are The Bond, Our Kinship with Animals, the other book is The Humane Economy. He was talking about that during the show. Excuse me. And of course, you can get those at Amazon.com. Okay, guys, I am taking off. I'm going to leave you guys to your rest of your evening. Hope to see you all tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening.